Okay, it's 9:30, so I'm going to call this meeting to order and let you all know that this meeting is being taped. Okay. On the agenda, past business, first we will acknowledge that we have an executive session. Next, I need approval of the minutes from the October 15th and November 3rd meetings. Do I have a motion?
There are some names on the agenda of the meeting that we held on election day that was held by Zoom with people in them. And the person recording the minutes had a difficult time identifying the people. So some of the names are even misspelled and incorrect. So those will be corrected.
Blake is one of them.
Blake is one of them, right? So I will include
With those corrections.
Also, I note that the meeting time is incorrect. Zoom is in a different time zone, I think. The meeting started at 6 p.m., not 1 p.m.
Do I have a second with those? Okay. All those in favor of the motion with those corrections being made, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Okay, future business. Discussion of individual issues from 11-3. Mr. Benio?
We had identified 3 issues, numbered 1, 2, and 3, that were the basis of our executive session that would be determined if it constitutes issues or problems that are suspicious, and what to do with those 3 issues.
Okay, issue, do we want to go with issue 1 first?
Issue 1.
Good overview.
Yes, without too many details, the issue was of a cast ballot that should not have been cast.
So we do-
Yeah, you
An application was received for a voter and processed based upon it being in the system. We later learned that this voter may be deceased. And we do not have the technology to look into this, so from a legal perspective, we are recommending that the board refer this to the district attorney as a suspicious circumstance, so it can be investigated.
Okay, do I have a motion to have the district attorney investigate our first issue?
I'll make that motion. Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of having the district attorney investigate our first issue, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, passes. Second issue?
Second issue, labeled number 2, is a voter who claims that they would not apply or vote a mail ballot, but that ballot was processed as if they did.
Okay, is this one we also want to recommend to have it being investigated by the district attorney?
This office does.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Third issue.
Item number 3 is a voter who received and requested 2 mail ballots at their home. 4 people registered, 2 different people registered and voted ballots eventually.
Okay,
Number 3.
do I have a motion that we have the district attorney investigate that? Second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. passes. Okay, moving on to the agenda, the final certification of the 2020 general election results.
With the suggestion from and guidance from the Department of State, there are, due to pending law cases last week, pertaining to the after 8 p.m. on 11/3 votes, the suggestion is to certify two different results, one including those ballots and one excluding those ballots. On the top of it, the title does say with segregated ballots, and there just wasn't enough room for that. I'll change those to identify them better. But the higher number, of course, is the ones with, and the lower is the ones without.
And we are to certify both.
That is my understanding.
Okay, can I have a motion to certify the first with the higher number of ballots? That would be counting the ballots after 8 p.m. that night. Do I have a second? Do I have any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of submitting and the votes, all of them, say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Now the second motion would be, we need a motion now for the ballots that were up to 8 p.m. on election night.
Correct, sir.
Do I have that motion? Do I have a second? Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Do you want to have a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Is there a public comment? Chair recognizes.
Hi, we moved for stenographer.
Well, it's being part of Zoom, but I can write it down.
Okay, my name is Ashley Strange. I'm with Lehigh Valley Stands Up. Lehigh Valley Stands Up, and the members that live in Lehigh County have been keeping an eye on this election very closely, and we have a number of issues that we noticed throughout the election. I emailed them last week to Mr. Benio. Did he get that to you?
We all have a couple.
All right, so I'll just go over kind of the top line stuff, and then I don't know what the next step would be to kind of fixing those, but I wanted to make sure that I was.
We've already had a meeting that we are going to do a post-election audit on, and we've already identified everything that we're not disagreeing with anything that you did. It's kind of like, what the Eagles should be doing this morning. Why did they lose, what went wrong or whatever? And Mr. Mulchaney has already set up a meeting and we're going to be looking into those things. Yes, we're not disagreeing with you.
Okay, all right, so I'll just go over some of the top line things. Generally, we found that the county was more reactive than proactive in trying to solve some of the issues that we knew were going to come up on election day. First off is parking. There was not enough parking, and there were a lot of police and the Allentown Parking Authority, which I know that you have no control over. Yes. But they were issuing tickets up to $100, and sometimes ticketing people just for slowing down outside the government center. And so, in the future, because we know that we will have another session of COVID related elections, making sure that there's either a drive-through drop-off or, calling it a holiday and blocking off this whole street. For the week of elections and early voting. And also making sure that the parking authority knows what voter suppression is, and that they were definitely engaging in it. And then, let's see, as for the late mailing of ballots, I know that there was a misprint, is that correct? Earlier, and so they had to be reprinted? No? Okay, so, scratching that.
But the ballots were sent out on the 7th, and a lot of folks didn't get theirs. And so USPS being what it is, just kind of in the future, working toward an earlier date. And being able to actually communicate with the office. There are a number of times when, Mr. Benio said that the phone was ringing off the hook, but, it rings all night, all through the weekend. And then I believe that you said that you brought in more people to answer the phones in the days leading up to Election Day. But seeing as there are thousands and thousands of
We had over 20,000 just in the month of October.
Right, so, kind of figuring that was going to happen, getting those extra people to answer the phones earlier would definitely have done that. And as I state somewhere in here, we had a bunch of volunteers that signed up to be poll workers, and some of them even were election protection trained. And so if you need extra people to answer the phone, we have scads of people that are willing to help out with that. The vote count, we talked to you about, how to work shifts to kind of get the count going 24/7, and then it paused. So in the future, like especially knowing the influx of votes coming in, like having a better plan and being able to work with people who are familiar with shift work would really push that forward. It was also really concerning that we saw the article from the Morning Call about the workers who were put under physical and mental strain. I know that when we went down there to deliver food and snacks, like people were crying when they saw us, and that's not a healthy work environment at all. And so I would really push the county to reevaluate what fosters a healthy work environment, and how much is too much of what you're asking your employees to do, and setting up proper shifts. Almost through. So for training, the June primary, we know that a lot of poll workers and poll judges said that they didn't feel like they were adequately trained, and a lot of them admittedly just said that they didn't watch the videos that were sent out. And so that is not at the fault of the county. And actually we did hear from people who took the training this time that they wanted to give enormous kudos to Diane and Tim for facilitating this training, because it was very helpful. But creating something that would test people's knowledge, like a Google form or something like that, so that we know for a fact that when judges go out, they know about when provisional ballots need to be taken. And then we want to be able to see, the community wants to be able to see funding. How much funding came in specifically for this election, what was it spent on, and where else could we get more funding if it all came down to dollars and cents. Especially I know that with the mail, the drop boxes, like they're not free. And so knowing where that funding is coming from and if there's anything that the community can do to kind of bolster that. We just want to see a little more transparency when it comes to that. The drop boxes were a fantastic idea. I think they really worked. Day one, the McCountry one was overflowing, right? So people liked them, people used them. Making sure that they're implemented as soon as possible, and possibly making sure that there aren't sheriffs that are deputized or sheriff's deputies that are deputized to pick them up. A lot of people have, especially around elections, people who have a lot of conflicting feelings about law enforcement, and whether or not their safety is going to be compromised if they go to vote. And you have lists and lists of people who are judges and volunteers and poll workers that would be more than willing to take on that risk as well. And finally, well, not finally, there's three things. Accessibility. I already went over being able to answer the phone and having everyone accessible to this area. And so getting an answering service would help with that. Poll watcher certification, there was a little hullabaloo that, you were able to fix and wasn't actually hullabaloo to begin with. But the fact that, it went out late, maybe, is there a date that you have to have the poll watcher certification turned in by? Not you, but that someone who is submitting a poll watcher.
The policy is that was approved by the board in 2016 is that the requests are guaranteed by election day if they're a week in advance. I was getting requests all the way up into including election day, which all requests were filled eventually. So the law states that I can issue those up into and including election day. So.
And maybe that's more on the part of the parties, like, maybe if there's some kind of making sure that the parties get them in a week in advance and then saying, sorry, no, you didn't get in. Is that, no?
I don't think that would have gone over very well.
Deadlines, people don't like it now.
Nope.
The final thing is poll site signs. A lot of the poll sites, especially the one out in front of the building, English and Spanish, we did very well as a county, especially compared to, say, Berks County that has a much higher Spanish-speaking population and probably less than half of the polling sites in Spanish. It was bad. But there were times when there were no signs that were visible, especially if polls open at 7 a.m. That's the darkest time. They close at 8 p.m. That's the darkest time. It gets dark at 5 o'clock now. So making sure that signs that are out are lit, they're visible, they're bilingual, and also we were told by poll workers that if we tried to put up signs where we did not see any, that they would be torn down. And so I don't know how to, I didn't really know how to, make a suggestion on this, but if you need extra volunteers to help put up signs before election day, or things like that, like we can make ourselves available, but signage is really, really important, especially for first-time voters. And that's the end of that. And I know that you've all had it before, and you've scheduled a meeting to.
We're going to be. It's definitely. I think this election was a perfect storm. You had the mail-in ballots for the first time in a major election like that. We had drop boxes for the first time. We did have a number of volunteers, but the problem we had to personally be very, very careful, and I explained that to you. With volunteers, we wanted to not use volunteers, just the people we already had in our system, so there wouldn't be anybody having a reason when the election was over, those people were from that party, or those people were from this party.
But would not election judges be?
Again, those kind of things, but as far as the deputies, I have absolutely no problem with our sheriff's deputies picking up from the drop boxes. I thought they would be the most secure group. And when I went out to the drop boxes and saw that, I don't think there was any voter intimidation going on because they went in to empty up a box. That one, I'm really happy that our sheriff went along with us and allowed us to use the deputies. I think that, and I know a number of counties also use sheriff's deputies. I think it was, we wanted to make sure we had the most safe, secure system, and I think that led to being no doubt about it.
But you can see how, as a white man, you would of course not.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. I agree with you on from that perspective. Absolutely. But I also have to look at the perspective for everybody of being safe and secure. And if somebody just came up to pick them up in a jacket or jeans with other people saying, "Oh my God, what's going on there?" Or somebody in a uniform.
There are uniforms that don't include, handcuffs and guns.
Well, yeah, but the sheriff's office can't, by rule, arrest you. Okay, so even on election day, they could only go to 12 a disturbance. The police would be the ones that have to do that. We did not use police. Okay, so there is a difference there.
Yes, and I understand that, and what I'm saying is. people
No,
like
and I
this
understand what
who
you're
sees,
saying, absolutely.
Who sees a gun and a pair
Yeah.
of handcuffs,
Absolutely.
they don't know the
I
difference.
know. But we're, again, from our point of view, we're trying to find the safest and secure, and that's what we were looking for.
I would like to add to that, thank you for laying out this blueprint for future consideration. You did a great job.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you for
and
that.
It wasn't just me, it
Yeah.
was a whole team of.
And you know the parking, you know how hard we tried with the parking. And I'll have to say, the mayor of Allentown was very cooperative too for the parking. He really was. But that is a separate authority.
And we're yelling at them.
And, well, again, we can't control the parking authority, either can the mayor of Allentown. So, you know, it was a legitimate, very thankful to the IBEW that opened up their parking lot. But, again, did we ever realize how many people would be, and that's the greatest
Yes.
part about this
I mean, we
election.
did.
You know, all of those problems are,
We knew there would be more than four.
yeah, but you know what, they're great that all these people are now involved, you know, and I'm glad, I'm not glad the problems occurred, but I think now it does give us a blueprint in how to change, and when we were reading your letter, it was like everything Mr. Mulchaney and Mr. Benio and I had already talked about, so we were not disagreeing with you.
Okay.
Is there any other public comment? Yes.
My name is Simon, Senator Deputy, I'm the field director at Make the Road.
Can you speak a little louder? Because you-
Sure. Hi, my name is Simon, I'm the field director at Make the Road. RADECKI.
Just so we don't have to change it.
I think we're good, please.
Mr. Morris, yeah.
RADECKI.
Thank you.
We ran an election protection operation on election day. We had over 75 people at any given time out at the poll sites looking at things. I think that specifically to the signage concern, part of the reason we were able to notice all the issues with the signs is because we had an election protection team out there. And I think one of the big things that I think would probably help is just like a pre-canvas of all of the sites, especially when it comes to COVID elections and consolidation. We saw a lot of people who went to their normal polling place, which was shut down, and there was no signage at the original polling place, so they didn't know where to go. There were a lot of people who looked at where they thought that their consolidated polling place was, and it was actually not the same place that was originally consolidated. And this is another reason why the signage is so important on those sites, especially places like the Ag Center, really large buildings or facilities that people maybe who have been voting for a really long time have never been to before, because they haven't been in a polling place. So it's not just first time voters. I want to lift that up, because like we had a lot of people who had those issues, and I think pre-canvassing those sites with a team of people that just call them up and say, okay, you're no longer a polling place. If someone there at that facility put up a sign that says, this is no longer your polling place, here's the one you go to. Because we had to do that, you know, basically for the election, because we would go to these sites and we would see that they were gone. And in some cases, we would put up a sign and someone would come out and tear down the sign. We would say, we really need people to, like, literally, we had one situation where someone came out, tore down the sign in front of their building. And then someone else, there was a voter right there, right? And they said, well, is that sign accurate? After they turned it down, the person said, yes, it's accurate, but I'm not gonna keep up the sign. So, you know, I think a pre-canvas is like calling in advance, calling the sites that you know are gonna be shut down, and just making sure that there's signage so people know where to go, I think would be super helpful.
Any other public comment? Okay.
Oh, sorry,
Oh.
one other thing. I don't know if this is gonna happen, so it's just like maybe a question, but like, when we get the results in, I think it's in everyone's interest to have as most people vote as possible, right? And so, I think it would be really helpful to have like a census of the ballots and how they were sent in and where the issues arose, like having an idea of the percentage of naked ballots, the percentage of
mail-in ballots that were put in the wrong place.
Mail-in ballots are put in the wrong, provisional ballots, why they were cast, doing some quality control on that, especially in the COVID election, getting a sense of where people are having trouble voting, because that way you're going to be able to see, oh, this is where people are having trouble. Maybe we don't know the reasons exactly, but if we see that 90% of naked ballots came from these two precincts, right? Maybe then we know, like, or they when it comes to provisionals, we see that there is a higher incidence at certain polling sites or something like that, or we can see that a certain percentage of provisional ballots were people who tried, or everyone who requested their mail ballot after a certain day, you can tell that they, having an idea of when those ballots came in and being able to go, okay, these are the people who cast provisionals and where they experienced issues and problems, so that we can, in the future, proactively sort of say, okay, these are where people tend to make mistakes and mess up and where their vote maybe doesn't get counted. Who are those people and how are we not getting their ballots in, or why are they having to vote provisionally? I think would be really helpful to figuring out in the future how we can figure out how to make things more accessible for folks.
Yeah, I think time to analyze it. We did not have time to analyze. We have been counting and counting and counting and the provisional ballots one at a time and whatever. So, yeah, now we get this behind us. We can get to the analyzing part.
So, but is there actually like an internal system where you've tracked like where like the precinct, where these came from the precincts, the reason for the provisional being cast, or like some way to do quality control check on that to determine like this is where people had the most problems?
Yeah, each ballot is determined what the reasoning they're not being counted for is logged in the system. Yes, so once that's all done, we can definitely look at the data and see where the issues center.
One interesting thing that I learned today, which I didn't know, is that when you filled out your application for a ballot, a mail-in ballot, if you checked permanent on that application, that means every time it's mailed to you. So then if you didn't realize that you did that, which has happened in a couple of instances, then the people show up to vote on election day, but they've received a mail-in ballot, so they're not allowed to vote because it's assumed that they sent in the mail ballot. So that's something that people probably need to go back and check. Did I check the permanent? Do I want to always receive a mail-in ballot or not? So I learned that today. I didn't know that.
And I had a number of calls to my office personally on that exact issue. And every time if you called me and said, listen, I would go down to voting registration office. Diane would look up and yes, you did check that. You might not have known you checked that, but we had the record. So it does, and again, because in the primary they checked that, then got it, and some people just discarded it when it came because they just didn't realize that, well, no, I'm going to go to the polls now. I just did that in the primary because I know one incident, this person was going to Florida for the primary, but checked that. But when it came, discarded it because now I'm home. And realized they had to do a provisional ballot.
Yeah, so having counts of that, and
Yeah.
like where it happened, who it happened to, like especially demographically, make the road is tight for most of the Latino folks, and having a sense of like if there's a discrepancy there where we can rectify, that's gonna be really important for us. So is there gonna be like a report then that's gonna come from the county about like here's sort of like issues, causes, maybe by region of the county or precinct or
No, I don't
something
think
like that,
we've ever
or
done
even
anything.
like an overall assessment, even if it can't be broken down to that.
If you email me what you're looking for, I can,
Okay.
if I have the capability, I can get you what you're asking. So in February, everything resets every year on permanent mail ballot. So in February, everyone who was on the permanent list will get a letter from me asking if they want to be continue to be on the permanent list in 2021. Depending on how they respond, will determine how they move forward in 2021 for the spring and November. If they don't respond, then they're off the list.
It's not an opt-in?
Pardon me?
It's not an opt-out?
No, you have to respond if you want to be on the list.
Is that Act 77, is that just a county determination?
Act 77.
Okay.
February, the letters will go out, and people can choose how they wish to continue in 2021.
Now, does that mean everybody that gets the letter will open it, read it? I mean, that's going to, you're never going to be able to solve it 100%. There's going to be people that might have even moved since then, or.
But we also have their phone numbers on file as well, and email addresses. So is there a chance to like tag these people multiple times to make sure that they don't get dropped from the mail voting? And is that a funding issue that
That's, you know,
And personal responsibility issue too.
yeah.
Could we send a free, like basically a form of pre-check boxes of some kind, where they if they, as long as they send it in, it's like already checked, or, I don't know. It's something like to make it easier for votes, it's just another barrier to voting.
If nothing else, we could perhaps do some sort of press release. Get the word out.
We will do the press release, we'll put it on the county website, we'll, you know,
Send them letters.
we'll do as many things as we can. Hopefully all the candidates will, you know, inform their constituents the same thing.
The public still has to take some
Yeah,
responsibility.
you know, you still have to,
And everybody's got, the COVID situation will be about.
yeah, we all have our vaccinations and
I'm mixing mine in the bathtub.
Oh. All right, any other public comment? Yes, sir.
So that actually just brought up, sorry, Dana Schwanke, Alter Media.
Okay, could you really be loud sitting back there?
Okay. The thing that you just raised about people getting absentee ballots and then showing up in person to vote, am I correct in understanding that those people were able to request provisional ballots?
Yes,
And then still vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
yes.
But again, that takes the time then, when we open the provisional ballot, then we have to go and check to see if they had already voted, because you can't vote twice.
Right.
So that's why, and I know Mr. White's been in the building every day watching those, and I would like to comment publicly that I am very, very proud of the Republican and the Democratic Party in Lehigh County. They sat together for over a week, checking each one of those ballots and agreeing all of the time on whether this was correct or incorrect. We did not have to go down there and separate them. They got along really well, and it was a great process. For everybody who yells that parties don't get along, they did, and I think they did a really good job in agreeing that there was no 400 questions about that. We went through this without anything. They both agreed, and I think that was a great process. It's a time-consuming process, and that's why so many people with provisional ballots kept calling my office. My vote hasn't been counted. I haven't seen it yet. Was it a provisional? Yes. Be patient. We're doing it, but we're doing it correctly. So,
I did also have questions. I know of at least one person personally who went to a voting station and the machine was down, and they were told to basically fill out their ballot and give it to a poll worker, and they were going to add it later. I know there were a couple other issues across the state with that. Is that something that's being looked into? Do we know why the machines went down?
Paper jams are the only reason. We didn't have to replace any machines on election day. Paper jams were the only reason for the ballots not being processed through.
In what district were they asked to leave their ballot?
It was Lehigh County.
What district?
I'm not sure, honestly. It's someone I know personally.
yeah, they shouldn't, you know, there shouldn't be a poll worker telling them to leave. They could still put it into the machine.
Emergency,
There's-
which is underneath the scanner. That's what
Yeah, it could still be put into the machine.
So you said there's an emergency bin that's underneath the machine
Yeah.
that they use that for?
Or just dedicated.
I think that is what they said they did. They put it
Oh,
in some
okay.
kind of
Well,
box.
then,
Yeah, it
yeah.
doesn't
Okay.
get the scanner jammed up top, right underneath is where the emergency bin is.
That's-
and then
okay.
the ballots are scanned later.
Okay.
And that was all certified by the.
We've already got it in
And
there.
then
We got a
state.
folder. We'll have that anymore. All right, any other comments? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So,
All right, we are adjourned.
but I just thank Tim for, and your staff for all the hard work. That was just super human effort, so thank you very much.
Tim literally slept in the office. Well, I mean, literally,